Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome back, everyone. Happy belated 4th of July. Hope everyone enjoyed their time with family, friends, and enjoyed the fireworks if you had gotten to see them.
Yeah, we went to a museum park out here that had the fireworks, but they go so quick, 20 minutes, they're over.
It's expensive. So 20 minutes, that's a good amount of time. Unless you're Disney, you take what you can get.
On that note, as we've done for the beginning of each of the other classes, we'll start to kind of like self-reflect and be in regards to how we're feeling today. I don't know if anyone wants to share how they're feeling today.
Well, I'm a yellow. I'm feeling good. That's what, it's the last day here, winding down. And tomorrow, you know how it is when you got to get on the plane the next day, how things get a little bit nervous. So I'm fine. I'm doing good.
That's good. Awesome.
I'm feeling yellow today too, Michelle. So I got your back in this.
I think
I'm the one who said, so I'm yellow.
I think I'm great today. I'm so tired. I'm like, I can't wait for the day to be over.
I agree with you. I'm gray as well.
It's only Monday. Everybody's tired and it's only Monday?
Yep.
Wow. It's
Wow.
muggy, it's hot, like it's already a long week.
It's what happens when you have a long weekend. You're just like, who wants to go back to work? It's okay. I get it.
I think it throws all of us off.
Mhm,
I know it
absolutely.
throws me off. So for this session, we're going to discuss some mental health considerations. Children who experience loss, separation, and trauma have potentially have mental health needs. Just due to their life experiences, the impact which impacts their behavior. And those behaviors are oftentimes misunderstood and can lead to misdiagnosing a child. Keep in mind that with trauma happens between people, and usually those individuals they had some kind of connection with. And so in order to rebuild that connection and rebuild trust, it has to be with another individual that can offer safety, consistency, and stability in order for that child to start developing trust with an individual. In this session, the characteristics that they focus on, remember there's 14, but in this session, it focuses on a foster parent being committed to a child, having realistic expectations and realistic views on a child, but also self-reflecting on themselves as well, and having adaptability and flexibility when parenting a child. Just flipping through here. Oh, the alphabet soup. This one is quite so this is diagnoses that we oftentimes encounter when children have come into care. And so some of the diagnoses are a child who was diagnosed with having anxiety, having depression, ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It's a mouthful. But one of the things that you'll see in regards to these diagnoses, sometimes they overlap one another. So at times it's hard to diagnose when some of the behaviors that the child shows, you can see it in different diagnoses. So it's something that always, just to be mindful that sharing the information, sharing your observations of the youth and reporting it to their providers to see if something was amiss. So again, it's important to understand the behaviors when when a child comes into your home, when a diagnosis is given. A lot of the times, because the children are usually diagnosed, that's the information. When we know the information, we share it with the family that we're looking to have the child placed in. So when we give you the information, we'll also be giving you, when we give you the information of the diagnoses, we'll also be giving you information of like, what are some of the behaviors that the child engages in? So that way you, as a family, can be informed and be aware. But on the flip side, like, please, ask questions. So that way we can also follow up, but also look up the information. So that way, the more information that you have, the more beneficial it is for you and for, in order for you to help the youth that comes into your home.
Yep, and always like take opportunities even during either the sessions or before a session with the clinician. If there's questions you're wondering about, or you're in say a med management meeting with the psychiatrist too, and you want to know more information, you can ask questions about that. We're always more than open to do some psychoeducation around those pieces so that you know what you're working with. But remember, the diagnosis is just a small piece of the puzzle, right? That gives an umbrella and a description for what we're seeing, but that doesn't mean knowing it or having a diagnosis solves everything, right? And the diagnosis is not an identifying feature for a young person the same way diabetes isn't an identifying feature for ourselves or being asthmatic. That's just a piece of who we are and some challenges that we may face, but it doesn't mean it's our whole picture. So these are just a list of some concerning and puzzling behaviors, things we may see from our young people when they're struggling, dealing with separation and loss. We know crying is always one, and for ourselves as adults, we know crying can happen when we're upset and angry, but it can also happen when we feel out of control or like we don't have any power and that frustration builds up. Hoarding tendencies, we did talk about that as well with the food, and where we can see some of our young people having tendencies to either hoard food or hide it in their room, sometimes because of not being able to have it prior as easily accessible. The outburst, they can be physical, they can be verbal. It's a wide range, being moody, hitting, and nightmares as well. Nightmares in particular for our little ones are always something that are very concerning. And remember, in one of our classes, we talked about what would happen if like you went and you were dealing with a youth, you went to check on them at night and you try to pull their blanket over them and they had like a strong reaction because of maybe some sexual trauma they have experienced. For really little ones too, there's also that whole idea of being separated from their adult caregiver and being in a new strange place and how that can add to the nightmares as well, and that adjustment period that needs to take place at night. So just being aware of that. It might not be anything that's going on in particular. It could just be a reflection of being separated and not in their usual environment. So thinking also about night lights, sound machines, the stars like some kids have in their room too, that just help them feel more at home. And moodiness, especially our teens, we got to take it into account when we have the hormones raging. That moodiness, sometimes we can't take it all personal. Sometimes it just happens with our kids, and it's so quick to react to be like, "Ooh, what'd you do?" They're getting a little spicy with you. But always keep in mind also, there's some of it is the trauma and the loss, and then there's pieces that are just human nature and hormonal in that period of time in their life. Anything else, Michelle?
No, it's just that sometimes some of those behaviors doesn't make sense to us. But just remember that some of these behaviors they've utilized as a defense mechanism as well. So just being mindful of that. So for an assessment on a youth, some of the things that are included in an assessment, is the trauma and gathering trauma and attachment history. Having the information as far as the physical impacts, and especially if there was exposure in utero, which with time and as the child continues to grow, there, we may see the developmental delays. What are some of the environmental impacts? The type, how they react in different settings, whether it be at home, at school, after school programs. And the assessment also includes the loss and grief in regards, especially for a child that has been, again, first time removed from their home, and the loss and the grief that they've experienced, but also when a child gets placed into a different home, because each removal is a loss. And so how that is reinforced. And so that would, that's what the assessment would include, which would help us understand the youth and some of the behaviors that we may encounter.
And Sam, you want to read this one out? The 7 core issues?
Sure.
Mm.
Loss begins the journey and remains at the center, because even when a child has a permanent family, it is crisis and or trauma that create the circumstances. There is the first loss that led to a child being with a new family, and then many secondary losses that continue to affect family members throughout their lives. Some of these are vague and may be described as a feeling of distress and confusion about people who are physically absent, but psychologically and emotionally present in their lives. And these feelings can occur at any point in their lives. Children lose both their first families, siblings, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. They may lose cultural, racial, and ethnic connections and or their language of origin. If they are separated as older children, they may also lose friends, foster families, pets, schools, neighborhoods, and familiar surroundings.
And so that's really to highlight, remember how we had also done that activity around the truck and the loss and what would happen when a child's first removed, just highlighting some of those pieces. It's not just about the removal from the home. It's that separation, that loss from who their original first family was, right? Whether that was a biological parent, a grandmother, an aunt, whoever that primary caregiver was, that was their person. And now they're no longer there. And then on top of it, you're also separating the siblings, the aunts and uncles, the regular normative routines of like every weekend, this is what we did, or after school, this is what we did. And those are those routines that are no longer there and in place. And while there will be a replacement and a new routine set in place, it's not the familiar. So it's just keeping those things in mind as we're working with our young people and understanding where they're coming from and what's impacting behind some of the behaviors, because behaviors are just the surface level. There's always something behind it that's giving it the driving force. And that's what we want to look at. We don't always want to just look at the behavior and say, well, they had a tantrum, they were yelling, or they slammed the door. That's one piece of it. But what was the behind it? What was the reason behind that? And that's where we want to dig a little more into that when we're talking during our family sessions about what was going on in the home at that time. Anything else, Michelle, to add?
No, you mentioned the driving force, and just being mindful that, or at least just recognizing that it's a defense mechanism. They're looking to survive the situation, and the way they've done it in the past, it's what helped them in the past. And now it's trying to get to the root of the issue, so that way we can start helping the child identify the reason I react this way is because this occurred. And now working with solutions for that youth, finding other coping skills to replace the ones that they've used for so long, which is going to take time. And please, I know it's easier said than done, not taking it personal.
Oh, so much easier said than done. And we don't want to belittle that in any way. It's just
Mhm.
something that we want to reinforce because we're all human and it's hard to not take it personal, especially if we're having our own type of day. And I'll say that for myself because there's days where I'm having a good day and I'm good and I can brush it off. And then there's days where I'm like, let me find Jesus in my life to my children when they take me there. So it's okay. We understand that piece, but we just want to reinforce that core value of trying to your best to not take it personal. And so on this page, we're talking about the intersecting diagnoses. We hear all these diagnoses all the time, and sometimes they cross each other and they'll have dual diagnoses, or the psychiatrist is like, hey, the young person is exhibiting some symptoms or some correlating behaviors that could go with different diagnoses, and they're still working with them and trying to figure it out. It also intersects with medication as well, because there are some medications that on paper are okay. We have one medication, it's strictly for targeting personality disorders. And then your young person might take it and you'll go, why are they taking a medication for a personality disorder or a mood disorder? And what the thinking is behind it is there are some medications that have dual purposes. And while it may be geared or advertised as something for mood disorder, it also helps with depression or helps with anxiety. And so the same thing with diagnoses. Remember, this is just a snapshot and a picture of what may be going on for your young person, and so that you can have a better understanding of how to approach some situations. But it's not the only picture. And some of these diagnoses over time and with age, they may change because the situation changes as well. So something to be mindful of. Michelle?
No, I think you covered it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So addressing children's mental health needs, recognizing as a parent, recognizing your role in helping to communicate your observations, what you see, your concerns, with providers, recognizing that the time that you spend with the child it could potentially increase that trust between the child and yourself, which in turn would allow, hopefully, that the child will begin to open up and start sharing their thoughts, their feelings, and you may encounter that with time, they may start disclosing information to you.
And I'll just preface also, because I know sometimes we're all very well-intentioned, eager beavers, and we want to help and we want to talk, and we're like, we're here for you, we're supportive, we want to be there for you. But we also have to remember to pump our brakes a little bit to give some space to the young person. So like the first time any of us meet someone brand new in our life, we don't go right away and start telling them all our business and what scares us, what makes us feel comfortable, what we're okay with. We'll do that over time. And remember, we have talked a lot about building that trust and relationship. And a lot of that is giving time and space for these things to naturally develop over time, with you working at it as well and doing some little building blocks and steps to gaining that trust and relationship. But the first time you're meeting that young person, they're not going to open up to you and tell you things right away. And we'll assist and support you in that process to peel back some of those onion peels, so to speak, the layers. But just keeping in mind that it's not going to be the first night that they're in your home, they're going to tell you all this stuff. Okay. So you want to do this one, Michelle, or you want me to?
It's statistics, it's numbers.
Okay. So
Sorry.
over medication of children and child welfare. So this is just something to be very cognizant about, because we know our young people in child welfare, they are getting more medication than kids not in foster care. And that's what we're showing here in the depiction. The percentage is that 40% were taking 3 or more psychotropic medications. And we often will ask ourselves, why is that? We have to really look at it as who is advocating and who's in the corner for this young person. There are some people who will have the idea of, if we have all these behaviors and we're not looking at what is behind the behaviors, what's driving it, we're trying to medicate and stop behaviors by just providing medication. So if we see a young person who's depressed, we're like, oh, we're just going to pump them with medication and work on address the depression from a pharmaceutical standpoint. But then you're not working on what else is driving some of that depression. While that may help take the edge off, it's not going to solve it completely. And that's where the therapy comes into play, whether individual, with the family, but working through some of those pieces, because the medication should be used in support of the therapy, not just in replacement of it, because you need them to work hand in hand. There are definitely some diagnoses that absolutely benefit from medication, but not all diagnoses and not all children need medication. You can have a young person that has ADHD and they might say they could use a stimulant. You know, everyone talks about stimulants help for ADHD to help bring down the hyperactivity and allow for the focus to happen. But that does not mean that every child needs that medication. There are other things that can be put in place, other coping skills that can be taught, depending on the level and where that child falls with the ADHD as well. So just keeping those things in mind and reminding ourselves that when we're having a child with behaviors or we're struggling with things that are going on, medication doesn't solve it completely. We can advocate for it. We can explore. We can talk to the psychiatrist of like, hey, this is what we're seeing and what's going on, and discuss what are the options, what medication would they recommend, and see if that helps. The other piece is also, if you have a young person coming to your home that's already on medication, learn about what the medication is, learn what side effects may be present, be able to see what happens if you're working with a psychiatrist and you're doing slow increments to increase the medication, or likewise decrease a medication, observing and reporting back to the psychiatrist and the team that you're working with on what you're observing in terms of changes for the young person. Because we always want to make sure that we're keeping in mind, are there tremors happening? Are there tics, facial tics happening? Does their mood seem to be really crashing low? Are they having a harder time sleeping because of the medication, or are they always look sleepy because of it too? So just things to be aware of. And so let me know if the sound is working okay, Michelle. Give me a little thumbs up for addressing children's mental health needs.
National Training and Development Curriculum for Foster and Adoptive Parents. Addressing Children's Mental Health Needs, Dr. Lisa M. Cullens, MD. Interviewer.
What are psychotropic medications?
Dr. Lisa M. Cullens, MD, Child and Adolescent Psychiatry.
So psychotropic medications are medications that can help individuals with a variety of different things. If an individual is having difficulties with their mood or worries, anxiety, or their focus or attention, or even at times where they might be hearing things or seeing things that aren't really there, or feeling very paranoid.
Medications should never be used as a form of punishment.
We can utilize psychotropic medications to be able to target some of those symptoms and make them feel better.
What goes into a thorough psychiatric assessment to determine if medication is necessary?
Let's explore this further. And so what that would really look like is just, once again, like going to your pediatrician, but we would do a comprehensive assessment. So we would really look at, well, what is going on, especially at home, school, and with their peer interactions, because those are really the global levels that we're looking at as far as functioning with their child and adolescent. So we review all of that. We look at school history, we look at medical history, we look at developmental history, we look at family history, social history, all these things, and we do a comprehensive mental status exam. And then we're working with both the child and the parents. We need all of them there.
Be sure to give as much history as you know.
For us to integrate this information, what's going on with the child, and those symptoms falling in a depression bucket, anxiety bucket, attention and focus bucket, and then how would we then target the treatment plan.
and changes to a child's routine, diet, or environments should all be considered.
And sometimes medications are necessary and sometimes they're not, but that comprehensive assessment is essential.
When might medications be used?
When a child might be feeling sad or down, actually more commonly when someone is feeling sad or down, a lot of times we see anger and irritability, worries or nervousness, and or at times even some of our kids might be experiencing psychotic symptoms where they might be hearing things or seeing things that aren't really there or feeling paranoid. At times we do consider medications to be able to target those symptoms.
What supports should be used in place before or after medications are used?
As a child and adult psychiatrist, the first route is not medications. It's actually looking at all these alternative supports. So one, I'm a huge supporter of therapy. And really, frankly, medications should be utilized in combination with therapy. Only when we're in a place where either the child just needs a maintenance dose, and or the symptomatology is so severe that we need to start medication so they can even access therapy, then we go with medication alone. But really, individual therapy is extremely helpful. At times when we have a child that might be, struggling in school, sometimes it's just a meeting with the school to look at how can we better support this child in school and decrease barriers to learning. And that might be
Importance of a multi-pronged approach.
additional resources in the school, pulling a child out, having a little bit more individualized instruction, more supports in the schools. So all these things need to be looked at before first jumping to medication.
For more information, visit NTD.
For medications and your role does anyone have any questions in regards to the video first? I'll just jump in. Okay, so with your role in regards to the medication that the children come into care, again, like Nellie was mentioning, being aware of what are what's the medication, what's used for that particular child, that particular youth, what are some of the reactions, and what is the regimen, the outline, how many, what are the milligrams and what time of day, and keeping to that schedule. If there are any concerns in regarding to behaviors, whether an increase in the behavior or a decrease in the behavior, reporting it to the team, reporting it to the prescriber, because they'll look at they'll take that information that's being given, and they'll make the decision as to whether or not an increase is warranted or a decrease needs having it titrated and decreased, or if it's something that can be stopped and another medication is going to be used in its place. Don't stop the medication if you have any concerns. It has to be, we have to be mindful that it has to be, reported to the prescriber and letting them know as to what's going on. The other piece too is that, in regards to the medication, most of the time the parents still have their parental rights. And so if there is going to be a medication change, or if one is going to be stopped and a new medication is going to be introduced, the parent that still has their parental rights has to sign off on it. They have to give that permission as well.
I just wanted to highlight what you were saying, Michelle, too, about the titration. So at any point, if a medication is going to be stopped, it has to be titrated safely so that they're slowly lowering that dose. With psychotropic medication, especially, depending on what type it is, some of them can cause other physical reactions. if you just stop cold turkey. So it really needs to be a discussion with the psychiatrist to decide whether or not how to do it safely and what they're recommending in terms of slowly stepping someone down or stopping something right away. But we need to have those discussions with the psychiatrist who's the prescriber and making sure it's being done safely.
Right. The other piece too is informing the pediatrician, especially if the child becomes sick, informing the pediatrician as what medications that the child is on. Because if they do have, if they are going to be prescribed an antibiotic or anything like that, it could impact the medication that they're using. So then it could be possibly a situation where they're taking the medication, but there's no benefit in taking the medication.
Yep.
So,
So that's
in-
in particular with some of the mood stabilizers and as well as the SSRI medications, the serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Those can have conflicting impacts with some medication. So it's really important to ask and ask those questions about what's okay to take and what kind of conflicts they can have interacting with one another.
For language around labels, we had spoken about in the last class about reframing. How we, reframing the words that we use when we're talking about a child. More on a strength-based basis. Hyper, as adults, we know what that means. For the child, they may not understand, but most of the time it has a negative connotation to it, including like the word crazy or oppositional. And so looking at more of a strength-based way to say hyper, I want to say last time someone had mentioned where just being active, they're always on the go. So just trying to rephrase. Full of energy was another one that someone mentioned.
And then the same thing for like oppositional, another way to look at it, because we're always trying to make sure we're being strength-based. Maybe we're just like, they're a great advocate for themselves, or they're inquisitive, they want to know more and they're trying to learn. Or, hey, they're going to be a lawyer someday. They know how to present a good case for themselves, right? So just things to be mindful of around the language and what we're using to describe our young people. And so now we're going into Foster and Jessica's success video.
So Jessica, what really helped you achieve the success that you have had and why you believe those forces around you worked?
The biggest thing I think was having people come into my life.
Can barely hear it.
There was very long periods of where
I noticed it too. Sam, do you know another way to make it louder?
No,
No?
I'm not sure.
Because I have it on like the loudest thing, but it's not, it's playing so low.
and at that time I had very firm beliefs that I was a stupid person.
I had a closed caption just in
I
case.
tested very low in community college, tested into third grade math and eighth grade
On my end, it says that you have paused screen sharing.
Has the video not been playing? No? Oh, geez, guys.
Yeah, it was, and then it stopped.
Okay. Now does it look like it's back? Okay.
Back
to the beginning, yeah.
You achieve the success that you have had.
Yeah, but the volume is like almost,
Yeah,
you
that's
can't
why
hear it.
that's why I put the closed caption on so at least we can read it, but
Oh,
that
my
makes it
life
hard
and
for you,
hold hope
Lorraine. I know.
There was
Okay.
very long periods of time in my adolescence where I had given up on believing that I could achieve anything. When I was 18, I went to a nonprofit organization and I met people there who started talking to me for the first time about education. And at that time, I had very firm beliefs that I was a stupid person. I tested very low in community college. I tested into 3rd grade math and 8th grade English, which was very discouraging. But they believed in me, and I really needed that because even after they discovered that I was pregnant and I thought that they were going to give up on me because I wasn't going to become a success story, they still pushed me. People have spoken life into me and I was dead.
Jessica Antonia Chandler.
No crying, baby. This is happy. This is happy. I want you happy. I want you to be so proud of us.
2 of my former foster sisters, when they found me on Facebook and saw that I had got my master's degree, they decided to go to college. I guess I was just so terrible that they're like, if Jessica got a diploma, if she graduated from college, anybody can. Like, this must be easy. And even though it wasn't easy, it was since they knew my story and they knew how much I had struggled and how bad my behaviors had been at one time, they knew that transformation was possible for them too.
Very inspirational.
Yes, it is. And one thing that she said that really spoke to me when she said, you know, they spoke life into her because, you know, her situation was dead. I really like that because I actually have that tattooed on my hand, speak life.
Oh,
So that's something that's really, you know, near and dear to me.
right. And they
Just
didn't give up on her after she got pregnant. That was so
Yes.
awesome.
yeah, and just the impact and power of words and how words matter and how you can lift someone up or tear them down with those same words. So being mindful of what the
Absolutely.
words are that we're choosing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Michelle, you're on mute. Just in case.
Like I moved the boxes over. I'm like, I don't know what it says there. Some just questions to reflect on. If anyone wants to share. What do you think a child with mental health considerations needs most from those caring for them?
Understanding.
Yeah,
You took the words right out of
Patience.
my mouth.
A lot of patience.
right. Patience and understanding sometimes can be, right, sometimes that can be trying, right? When you feel like you're trying to motivate them and you're trying and you're giving them that, you know, those messages and sometimes it may take them a little bit longer. Think about people you know, and then again, this is if you want to share, just, and you could keep it in your mind, you don't have to say if you don't want to, but think about people you know who have experienced mental health challenges and who have been successful. How did they address the challenges? Right? Sometimes people have their own support system.
Well, I know somebody that with a little bit of medication and therapy and the medication like kind of levels them off. and they're able to focus more. As long as they stay on their medication and understand that that's what they need for now, they're doing pretty good. So I think sometimes the medication, at least they realize it's not a bad thing and it's helping them. So sometimes, people sometimes think the medication is, this is something bad, but sometimes it just levels them off.
Right.
And like you said, it helps when they're able to reflect on it and realize and recognize, oh, this is actually helping me,
Right.
helping me to focus, help me to motivate and get things done.
And I always try to remind teenagers, especially who may feel worried about starting medication because there's so many stigmas around it, is talking to them too. Like, if you had diabetes, would you take the insulin? You would, right? Because it's about helping yourself. Or if you needed glasses, you'd wear the glasses because you don't want to be blind. And trying to like lower some of that stigma and ease those apprehensions, because sometimes, like you said, Sam, that medication can just, even the smallest amount could be just enough to help give you that peace of mind and that clarity to see the next steps ahead and kind of take the edge off a little bit.